How did it begin, your story, with this...
With me being an activist, or with
an activist and interested in women's rights?
Well, yeah,
you are a feminist,
yeah.
naturally, and the 50-50 dream. When that began?
Yeah. Well, you know, I was raised up in a very a family where justice was very important. My father was a lawyer, but they were social democrats, and they thought that everyone should be treated equally. They weren't very much into gender equality at all, actually. And my father died when I was only 17, so I wouldn't know if he actually was, but I didn't get to know that. But my mother is just very unaware about those things, but she's very much into fairness. So for me, that was very obvious for me that it should be like that. And then when I was appointed the first time as a CEO, which was in the advertising business, I was 34 years old, I was newly divorced, I had one child, and the only questions I got was how are you going to manage, and who is going to take care of your child, and how will you get the life puzzle working, blah 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 blah. So little about the profession and what did I want to do with my assignment and stuff. But then what happened, the first thing, my first day at office actually, as the CEO, I got a phone call from a journalist who had received our survey of payment and realized women didn't get as much paid as men. So he asked me why. He said, Anna, what do you say about this? I said, yeah, you know, it's shitty, but that's how it is. Don't you know that? The whole society is full of inequality, and women never get paid the same as the men. So, I mean, and then I had a long lecture, like half an hour, and I thought I was very good in explaining. And I didn't realize, because I didn't have any media training by that time, that when the magazine came out, which was a business trade press, I was the cover of the whole front page, and the headline was, "It's shitty," says Anna Serner. And that I got a phone call immediately from my male chairman of the board, and he was not very happy with this, because it wasn't why he assigned me. But of course, a lot of other people called me up, and I became the spokesperson for gender inequality, because there aren't really any female or women, or even men, actually more men in leading positions that talk about gender inequality. The women are so afraid of getting stigmatized and being considered as a problem or a bitch, so they pretend they're men and pretend they are part of that homosocial group that works together, which they aren't, but they don't understand that until they fail in some way and fall out of the system, because they didn't have anything, no network around them, because they thought they actually were a man. So I decided that, well, I just couldn't, there wasn't a choice for me than to address the issue. And when you start addressing it, you become a feminist and an activist. Though active means that you have to do and not only talk. So, and as if you have the possibility, of course. And as I was in the leading position, I could actually do things. So I decided not to talk, but to do, and then to talk about what we are doing. Because just talking didn't make a movement. So that's how it all started. And then 14 years later, whatever it was, 13 maybe, I was appointed CEO of the Swedish Film Institute. And by that time I had another CEO job in between, and both the latter ones, when I was asked for the job, I was really clear that, you know, I have been a feminist all my life and I've been working openly with this, so if you don't want me to do that, you shouldn't appoint me, because I'm never going to stop that. And they didn't understand what that meant. So they were like, yeah, you keep
Okay.
on do what you're doing. That's a change. That's kind of fun. Until it sort of ends up in their lap and they're not that happy any longer. Because in Sweden we have an expression, shit is flowing. So when you start digging for shit, it pops up to the surface. And you can see it, and then they can see it, and then that's a problem. So when I came to the Film Institute, I realized that there was as big gender inequality there as anywhere else. We funded 26% female directors, but we had an assignment from the government saying, the government and the business actually saying that the business should aim for a gender equal funding, and then there was this protocol under it explaining what do they mean, and the explanation was you should aim for 40-60 and the biggest, but you always have to take in consideration quality, never equality in front of quality. So for me that's rubbish actually. So I said that immediately when I got the question, what do you think about gender equality? I said, 40-60, that's rubbish. Gender equality means 50-50 over time, not every year, but over time. So because if you say 40-60 and happy with that, women gets 40 and men get 60. We know that. So and then I just realized that I had to do my strategy. I found out 13 years earlier that it's not good enough talking, that won't change anything. So I had to be active, and I had a very close friend and colleague, and I trusted her very deeply. So she and I worked out this action plan that we made. And the most important thing with the action plan is really not the specific actions, except for the monitoring, that we're monitoring and counting every decision always, and talk about it always, not just once a year, but every decision time. We aggregate the numbers and we talk about the numbers, and that means that no one ever forgets what they are there to make decisions about. But otherwise our actions are really, they're nice, they're good, but they don't change anything. What changes is that it gets very obvious for others in the business, so they realize, I'm serious. I won't go for a no, there aren't any women. And it's very concrete, and it's something that people talk about, and that means that everyone gets aware. So the action plan could actually consist of whatever, as long there are actions that people can talk about. So we had an action plan saying we want to go from 26 to equal funding within 3 years. By the end of 15, we want to be funding equally, and I hope I don't have to quota, but if I do have to, I'm not afraid of it. But we didn't have to quota. We are not quota. We are just scrutinizing every project as severely as we have done with the women before. Men has always been like, oh, I love this project and he's such a genius, and you fund it, while the women are, oh yeah, she's pretty nice, but we tried a woman last year and that didn't turn out well, and I'm not sure, this topic is really, about a young girl, is that really interesting? But what I do is I demand all projects to be measured in the same way. So it turns out that when you start digging into the male projects, they aren't usually that good, so they sort of fall out, while the female projects aren't always that bad. It turns out when you dig into it, they are pretty interesting, and suddenly we are funding equally. But I'm sure that this won't hold on unless we keep up the spirit all the time. So now it's 2016 and our action plan actually finished by 2015. So we are now creating a new action plan.
What is it?
And the new action plan is by 2020 we want 50-50 in front and behind the camera. So we want even female protagonists to be able to have lines. We want the films to pass the Bechdel test. We want the new perspective of women in other positions than being the mistress of a man or one leading position. So you can see
Stories.
when there is a woman behind the camera, these things changes in front of the camera. And we made we didn't, but it has been made a research about what happened in front of the camera in the films of 2014 when we funded equally. And you can see that, well, actually that's not true, but anyways, the films that premiered 2014 it was. And it turns out that 100% of the films made by women passes the Bechdel test, while half of them don't when men are in back of the camera. The whole team gets more womenized, so sort of to say. When you have a female director, it's more likely you will have a female cinematographer, a female scriptwriter, not really a producer because they're all over the place already. Both actually, even though we are not funding, the private money uses female producers as well. So that is pretty cool actually.